Silent Hill has always been a franchise that has taken a special place in my heart, and I can say that the experiences I had in this series are some of the most vital and influential experiences in my personal history, and even to some extent formed some of my ideologies towards the horror genre. The Team Silent trilogy serves so beautifully in the horror genre and its dimensions that it's really hard to ignore their impact on your mind and soul after experiencing them. But there's Silent Hill 2, a work that separates itself from both its predecessor and the next, telling a story that has not only dominated the identity of the franchise, but also the city of Silent Hill. And so we are witnessing a story that we never really saw again, not only in the franchise, but in the genre as a whole. Since remake is in the works, I thought it was a better time than now to tell you a little bit about my love for SH and one of the greatest horrors of the genre after a lot of talk about RE. Let us once again step into the dead mind trapped in the prison of hell on Earth. After releasing the first version and telling Harry Mason's story, the Team Silent decided instead of a direct sequel to a new idea and a very different theme, a much more personal and internal one that really follows the psychological issue and its dimensions. Rather than addressing extremist religious sects and declaring God, it depicts a broken man trapped in his own personal limbo, whose sole purpose is to find his wife, Marie, who is long dead, but whose voice is strangely heard through the thick fog of Silent Hill. Personally, I like this idea of fiction a lot more because it not only blended directly into the psychological fear, but it also seemed to me to make the second version of Silent Hill the greatest show of Silent Hill, a city that is an entity that devours you. Of course, this doesn't mean that the first and third versions didn't have interesting ideas, but the thing is, by eliminating the Order as an antagonist of your experience, this small American settlement became a unique danger to the game, both in narrative and gameplay terms. How you use Silent Hill in bringing together the thread of narrative, characterization, and even pinning your psyche is what I think makes it very special and distinctive, not only in this series, but in the horror genre's history in general. Silent Hill 2 may be the only gaming experience I've ever had to describe, because I believe that since Silent Hill brings the deepest and darkest thoughts and nightmares of its victims, including James, into reality, it connects directly to your psyche and makes the experience you have of it. Just like James, it's a personal experience. The process of the game while telling James's story, but in a particular way, the mental signal coordinates you and him, causing your psychological and personality characteristics to flow through the narrative of the game, and ironically, different endings of it move in the same direction. SH2 doesn't directly put a choice at your feet at any point in the experience it offers. It never tells you to choose a dialogue. It never asks what your choice is for the path forward. What this work does is that it allows the player to put himself in James's shell, despite being in control of the character. And in addition to telling the story of this character, he is overlooking his actions with his actions that are closer than anything to his ideologies, while James is a single character with the characterizations. It is clear that his psychological qualities are inherited from you, and that is why I believe that no other psychological effect has been able to challenge such a player in his psychic dimension and fit him into his process. Let me give you an example, but I'll be a little clearer. During the game, you'll encounter different characters, including Maria, each with their own purpose in the story, and are actually triggers to reveal your personality and psychological traits. While at Brookhaven Hospital with Maria, she becomes unwell and is forced to rest in one of the hospital rooms. Here, I personally went to his room several times during my experience because I felt I had a duty to protect her. It was my sense of duty that made me do this in my own mind, and the game had no part in it. But it's interesting to know that this is one of the main motivators of one of the endings. In other words, a psychic point connects me directly to James, making it possible for me to attract his temper rather than to learn my mood and my psychological characteristics. In general, I personally believe that you start playing as James and you see the world and events through his personal eyes, but at the end of the game, it is James who is looking at the world, his life, and ultimately his story through your eyes, and this is a feature that makes the experience of SH2 so special and distinctive that personally, with all of my experience, I can't imagine another game that has been able to leave mental fear directly in your mind and soul and leave an eternal trace in it. The first version of SH created a great picture of Silent Hill City, but as I said, that and its sequel, Part 3, both focused on the Order, and Silent Hill was actually a complement to the Order. SH2 is a version that gives the city a personality and identity, and in fact portrays it as an independent character that constantly bends reality to its advantage, bringing you and James to its knees. This causes an attractive dynamic to be formed in the process of the experience of the game, and the same dynamic directly reinforces the sense of fear and isolation, because despite the possibility of fighting, and even more cold guns than the classic RE works, which greatly ease the fight, you still feel a strange feeling of powerlessness because Silent Hill has always been a step away forward from the you are ahead. Always know your next move and always look at you. When Silent Hill as an entity that is tasked with devouring the player in its own space, it does a great job, and in the same proportion the effectiveness of the enemies of the game will increase and have a sense of meaning in the same way as the city that hosts them. Why do you think Pyramid Head could become such an iconic face for the horror genre? Sure, his design is great, but once you understand the conceptual meaning of his existence in James's path, that scary face is gone and you look at him with a different look. Pyramid Head is the inner torture goddess of James, which was actually created by Silent Hill, and so only James can see him that way. All the characters you meet in Silent Hill have their own inner pains, traumas, and psychological wounds that have been used against them by the city. And the pyramid is the symbol for James. Sometimes a monster can have an esoteric reason that perpetually generates fear and moves you until they have a fearful, inward, empty face that then becomes meaningless for a while. However, Konami did exactly years later with Pyramid Head when he disregarded lore and surfed over the character's popularity for no reason, interrupted his connection to James, and brought him into Silent Hill Homecoming. While there is no logical reason for the character to exist in that work, it is there that when he comes to his head. I looked at a pyramid and found nothing in it but a blank body. But to get back to our point, SH2 is an experience that aims far more than just to provide you with a survival horror experience. It tries to solve you in a good way, disrupt the equations, and at the same time tell a story in which both you and the character will add a piece, learn from it, and act accordingly. Fear is an idea that Silent Hill takes more than just a feeling. The Silent Hill franchise is a series that many would like to compare to RE, but I think the two franchises, despite living under the banner of a single genre, have very different approaches to fear, gameplay, storytelling, characterization, and more. That makes them very different from each other at the same time. In the past, in other videos, I have pointed out that the presence of Silent Hill alongside Resident Evil always created a suitable dynamic in the horror genre, because these two franchises, due to their distinctions, can not only exist simultaneously and move forward, but it can be said that each of them represents a part of the identity and prominent structure of horror genre. Silent Hill has been a franchise in general whose original trilogy experience, especially the second version, has had a profound impact on me, and not only have huge incentives along with RE to reinforce my love of the genre, but I can say that at the end of each of these works I always added something new to me, a value, a red line, or a new perspective. Some of the concepts that we struggle with even on a daily level, but are so dim in the midst of the tumult of our lives that sometimes we forget their existence. I think that's exactly one of those characteristics of Silent Hill that makes it very difficult to experience and describe it, because it connects directly to the soul, the psyche, and your existence as a human being in general. And since we're all human beings with distinct natures and perspectives, eventually when we're looking at the end page of SH2, the experience that we remember from that work will also be very different. Some ask, why did Konami switch to the second rather than remake the first one? The answer is simple. The second version is not only an independent story between the original trilogy, but it can be said that it best presents all the outstanding and important features of the series. Although, technically and in gameplay, the third version certainly has some very obvious advantages. Bloober team will definitely have a very difficult way to recreate this, because I think storytelling, characterization, and how to portray Silent Hill are all very important elements in drawing the full picture of fear that the game presents in the psychological dimension. And in this regard, recreating such a work requires a lot of precision. When Capcom introduced a remake of Resident Evil 2, I was relieved because I believed the company knew the value of this work and the IPRE in general, and that the development of the remake was in the hands of confident people. But if I say that I feel the same way about SH2, I'm definitely lying, because I don't trust Konami and his policies, but I would be lying if I said that future SH projects, and especially the idea of walking around this city again, would not excite me. So if I have to say that my excitement is very high with a high dose of worry. It is safe to say that this return of the SH franchise is Konami's last chance to revive it, and if it misses the opportunity with its usual stupidity, we may never see a new work of this series again. Bloober team is another case that worries many longtime fans of the series, including me. Not because I think they can't do it, because I happen to think that the studio has a lot of love for the horror genre, and especially the Silent Hill series, and this is a very important and outstanding feature, because in that case, it certainly has a good understanding of the structure and vital points of they have these effects. But the problem is that they've never had the experience of developing such a large and profound impact. So while I don't think they'll necessarily fail to reconstruct it, at least on a superficial level, I am really concerned that all of the features that we've talked about so far in this video have not been found in the game, or they don't have own heaviness at all. Ultimately, it is hoped that Bloober is aware of the value of the work they are rebuilding, and Konami does not try to impose on the Bloober team its foolish business approach to milking the name of the collection like the 7th generation. Silent Hill 2 has been one of the most impactful gaming experiences of my life, which makes it a great value in my heart. It completely changed the structure of horror storytelling and showed that fear is an idea that can be broken and transformed and ultimately presented in many forms. This allowed the player to be overwhelmed by a mere sensation and allowed them to feel fear in a natural way, not necessarily from external elements, but through their internal and psychological stimuli.